I'm lazy. I don't have the willpower. I'm too lazy to make it. You've probably said these things to yourself, maybe this morning, maybe yesterday. We often use the word laziness to explain why we don't do what we should be doing. But laziness is almost never the real problem. Laziness is a word we stick onto something we don't understand. In reality, behind what we call laziness, there are often other things: fear, perfectionism, tiredness, lack of clarity, emotional exhaustion. Today, we're going to look behind the word laziness. And maybe you'll discover that you are not lazy. You are something else. And that changes everything.
George, I feel called out because I call myself lazy almost every day. When I don't do my workout, I tell myself, you're too lazy. When I put off work, I tell myself it's your laziness. When I stay in bed in the morning, I tell myself, you're really a slacker. And that makes me feel guilty. But at the same time, that guilt doesn't make me move. It paralyzes me even more. So if laziness isn't the real problem, what is hiding behind it?
That's an excellent question. And the fact that you call yourself lazy is part of the problem. Because when you tell yourself, I'm lazy, you stop searching. You found an explanation, but that explanation is wrong. And what's more, it hurts you. Laziness is not a cause, it's a symptom. It's like having a fever and saying, my problem is the fever. No, the fever is a sign that something else is there. The real question is, what causes this laziness? What is really blocking you?
So what is hiding behind my laziness? Because when I look honestly, there are times when I am very active. I can spend hours doing things I love, but for certain tasks, I'm completely stuck. It's like my body refuses to move forward.
That's typical. Real laziness would be constant. If you were truly lazy, you wouldn't do anything, ever. But that's not you. You do many things. So the problem isn't that you're lazy. The problem is that certain tasks trigger resistance in you. And that resistance can come from several places. Sometimes it's fear. Fear of doing it wrong, fear of failing, fear of judgment. And your brain, to protect you from that fear, pushes you to avoid the task. You interpret this avoidance as laziness, but it's actually fear in disguise. Sometimes it's perfectionism. You have an ideal image of how the task should be done, and because you feel you won't be able to reach that perfection, you prefer not to start. Again, we call that laziness, but it's perfectionism. Sometimes it's tiredness, not physical tiredness, but mental, emotional tiredness. You're drained, and your body tells you, stop. But instead of listening to that tiredness, you force yourself to go forward. And when you can't, you call yourself lazy. Sometimes it's a lack of meaning. The task feels empty, unimportant to you. Your brain, which looks for meaning, refuses to engage. And you think it's laziness.
Okay, I'm starting to see that it's more complicated than just, I'm lazy. But how do I know what is really hiding behind my block?
Imagine your motivation is like a car engine. Sometimes the engine doesn't start. If you don't know engines, you might say, this engine is bad, it's lazy. But in reality, there is a specific reason. The battery is dead, or the fuel is bad, or the starter is broken. If you just say, the engine is lazy, you'll never fix anything. You have to open the hood and see what's wrong. You're the same. When you get stuck on a task, you need to open the hood and look at what's happening inside. Is it fear? Is it tiredness? Is it perfectionism? Is it a lack of clarity? Each problem has a different solution. If you treat everything as laziness, you always use the same solution, forcing yourself, making yourself feel guilty. And that doesn't work because it's not the right treatment.
But exactly. When I'm stuck, I try to force myself. I tell myself, come on, do it, stop being lazy. Sometimes it works a little, but often it doesn't last. And then I feel even more guilty.
That's the most common mistake. We believe the solution to laziness is to force ourselves. But forcing yourself uses willpower, and willpower is a limited resource. If the cause of your block is fear or tiredness, forcing yourself will just drain your willpower and strengthen the fear. That's not how you solve the problem. It's like if your car is out of gas and you tell yourself, I'll push the accelerator harder. That won't work. You need to put in gas. Or if the battery is dead, you need to recharge it, not push harder. So before trying to force yourself, you need to identify what's missing. Do you need clarity? Do you need rest? Do you need to reduce the pressure of perfectionism? Do you need to remind yourself why this task is important to you? Once you've identified the real need, you can act. And often, the action becomes much easier.
Does science confirm that what we call laziness is often something else?
Yes. There's a concept called ego depletion or decision fatigue. Studies have shown that the more decisions we have to make, the more our ability to control ourselves decreases. That's not laziness. It's a form of mental exhaustion. If you spend your day making choices, by the evening, you have no energy left to force yourself to do anything. And we call that laziness, when it's really just cognitive tiredness. There's also research on motivation and fear. When we avoid a task, it's not because we're lazy. It's because the brain anticipates a negative emotion. That anticipation creates discomfort. To avoid that discomfort, the brain pushes you towards something else. It's a protection mechanism, not a moral flaw. Another interesting phenomenon is what's called effort aversion. Our brains are programmed to save energy. That's a legacy of our evolution. So it naturally prefers activities that require little effort. That's not laziness, it's biological programming. The difference between those who act and those who don't is not that they don't have this programming. It's that they have learned to work around it by making effort less scary or by making it more meaningful.
So instead of fighting my laziness, I should try to understand what it's trying to tell me?
Exactly. Laziness is often a signal. It tells you something is wrong. Maybe you're exhausted. Maybe you're afraid. Maybe this task has no meaning for you. Instead of exhausting yourself fighting it, listen to the signal. When you treat the cause, the symptom decreases.
I'll try to apply this to my life. Yesterday, I had a report to write. I put it off all day. I told myself, I'm too lazy. But thinking about it now, maybe it wasn't laziness. I was afraid the report wouldn't be good enough. I was afraid of my boss's judgment, and that fear paralyzed me.
That's an excellent example. It wasn't laziness, it was fear. The fear of not being good enough. And what's interesting is that if you had treated the problem as laziness, you would have tried to force yourself. You would have felt guilty, and the fear would have grown. But if you treat the problem as fear, the solution is different. For example, you could tell yourself, I'm afraid this report won't be good, so I'll start by writing a messy version, just for myself. I'll write without judgment, and I'll see later. Fear decreases when you accept doing something imperfect.
And another time, I couldn't do my workout. I told myself I was lazy, but actually, I was exhausted. I had slept very little, I had a tough week, my body needed rest. But I forced myself, I did the workout, and afterward I felt even more exhausted.
That's classic. Tiredness is not laziness. Tiredness is information. Your body tells you, I need to recover. If you ignore that information and force it, you'll exhaust yourself even more. And then you'll have even less energy for the following days. The real solution is to listen to the tiredness, take rest, and come back when you have energy again. That's not laziness. That's intelligence.
So, I need a method for when I feel lazy to identify what's really hiding behind it. Can you give me a system?
Here's a 4-step method. I call it the DETEC method. D. Detect the moment. When you feel yourself putting off a task, stop. Don't go straight to self-criticism. Observe what's happening. Ask yourself, what exactly am I feeling when I think about this task? Is it fear? Tiredness? Boredom? Confusion? The first step is to identify the real emotion or state. E. Evaluate without judgment. Don't tell yourself, I'm bad for feeling this. Tell yourself, I feel this. It's information. Accept the emotion. Fear, tiredness, boredom, these are signals. They are not bad in themselves. By listening without judgment, you can understand what you need. T. Treat the cause, not the symptom. If it's fear, ask yourself, what exactly am I afraid of? Then look for an action that reduces that fear, like starting with an imperfect draft. If it's tiredness, ask yourself, do I need rest or a very light action to get me going again? If it's lack of clarity, clarify. If it's lack of meaning, remind yourself why this task matters. Each cause has its solution. E. Engage a tiny adapted action. Don't try to do the whole task at once. Choose a tiny action that matches the cause you identified. If you're afraid, the tiny action could be write 3 sentences without rereading them. If you're tired, the tiny action could be put down my phone and breathe 5 times. If you lack clarity, the tiny action could be write the first step on a piece of paper. The tiny action should be so easy that it doesn't trigger resistance. C. Celebrate the fact that you acted. Don't celebrate the result. Celebrate that you did the action. Tell yourself, I listened to my signal. I acted. This celebration reinforces the new behavior. Instead of calling yourself lazy, you train yourself to be a person who understands their blocks and acts despite them.
I imagine I'm not the only one confusing laziness with something else. What are the most common scenarios?
There are several I often see. First scenario, the perfectionist's laziness. The person wants it to be perfect, so they don't dare start. They call themselves lazy, but actually, they are afraid of imperfection. The solution: give yourself permission to do ugly work. An ugly draft is better than a blank page. Second scenario, the exhausted person's laziness. The person has worked too much, given too much, done too much. Their body and mind are drained. They try to force themselves, but it doesn't work. The solution: real rest, without guilt. Then start again with tiny actions, not a huge load. Third scenario, the unmotivated person's laziness. The person doesn't see the meaning of the task. They find it useless, boring, of no interest to them. Their brain refuses to invest energy in something meaningless. The solution: either find personal meaning in the task, this boring task brings me closer to my goal, or make it more enjoyable, listen to music, do it with someone, or automate it, or delegate it. Fourth scenario. The overwhelmed person's laziness. The person has too many things to do, doesn't know where to start, so they do nothing. The solution: take a piece of paper, write everything down, and choose just one thing to do, the smallest possible. Fifth scenario. The discouraged person's laziness. The person has tried several times, failed, and now has no hope. Their brain avoids to avoid reliving the failure. The solution: redefine success. Success is no longer finish the task, but do one tiny action. When success is within reach, discouragement decreases.
If I stop defining myself as lazy, who am I? This label has been there for a long time. I grew up telling myself I was lazy. It has almost become part of my identity.
That's a deep question. Identity is what we repeat. If you've repeated for years, "I'm lazy," your brain has built an identity around that. But that identity is based on a misunderstanding. You are not lazy. You are a person who, faced with certain tasks, feels fear, tiredness, lack of clarity, and you learn to call that laziness. But if you change the name, you change the identity. Start defining yourself differently, not by what you don't do, but by what you do. You can tell yourself, "I am someone who tries to understand my blocks. I am someone who acts, even with tiny actions. I am someone who listens to my signals." These are more accurate identities and more useful ones. The identity of lazy condemns you to stay stuck. Why? Because if you are lazy, it's a fixed trait. You can't do much about it, so you stay inactive. The identity of a person learning to act despite their fears, that is an identity of progress. It allows you to move forward, experiment, change.
George, I think I'm going to stop calling myself lazy. I realize that word has trapped me. It stopped me from looking for the real causes. It made me feel guilty instead of moving me forward.
So remember this, Emma. The real problem is not laziness. Laziness is a word that hides reality. Behind it, there is often fear, tiredness, perfectionism, lack of clarity, discouragement. Stop calling yourself lazy. Stop fighting a label. Open the hood. Look at what's really happening. Listen to what your body and mind are trying to tell you. And treat the cause, not the symptom. You are not lazy. You are human. And a human, when stuck, needs understanding, not judgment.
I'll try. Next time I get stuck, I won't tell myself, "Stop being lazy." I'll ask myself, "What's really going on?" And I'll listen to the answer.
Do that, and you'll see that behind every block, there is valuable information. Information that, once understood, sets you free.